Good afternoon, Tansei, and welcome to APTN InFocus. I'm Daryl Stranger. Today we're focusing on Indigenous women in charge, from female chiefs to a national leader, and women who want to take on more leadership roles. We'll look into the rise in women in leadership roles and some of the hardships they face. And as always, we want you to join in on our conversation. You can tweet us at APTN InFocus, or you can email infocus@aptn.ca. Now, before I introduce you to our guests today, let's take a look at where we're at in terms of leadership on First Nations across the country. According to Indigenous Services Canada, as of 2022, there are 522 male chiefs. Women make up a quarter of that, with only 170 female chiefs across the country. Now, when it comes to band counselors, nearly 2,000 are men and just over 1,000 are women. Now, these numbers don't include councils who are not required to share their election results with Indigenous Services Canada. Now, joining us now is Grand Chief Kathy Merrick, the first woman to lead the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Now, Grand Chief, we really appreciate you joining us here in studio. It's a pleasure to have you here. So I just mentioned some numbers about female chiefs across the country compared to male. What goes through your minds when you see those numbers?
We've come a long way in terms of women coming into leadership and coming to become chiefs of their nations. Back in the day, in the 70s and the 80s, you would very rarely hear of women taking leadership roles. And so it kind of changed throughout time. And for Manitoba itself, we have, I believe it's 9 women chiefs and 80 women councillors from their respective communities. So even that has changed in terms of having women councillors representing their nations.
So you've been in your role, you were elected just over a month ago now, I guess. So in that short time, how's it been? I imagine incredibly busy?
It has been. I've been there a month and 3 days. I keep the count. And it's been very busy in terms of being invited to speak at events and being able to meet people, meet leadership, and it's very exciting. It's busy, but a good busy, right? And just yesterday, we were in Ottawa and we got to meet the Prime Minister, and so even to that. Meeting the National Women's Chief was a great honor for myself to be able to look up to women in powerful leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we're talking about Indigenous women in charge today. So why is it important a woman is leading the AMC after so many years of men leading the helm, so to speak?
It's a time and place for women to take that role. It's crucial for our people at this point in time in our lives, and how the governments have treated us. And it's up to the women to take the stand, to be able to speak on behalf of their people, and to be able to correct the wrongs of what government has done to our people. And we need to be able to be vocal, to be able to relay the messaging from the community, from the First Nation level to the governments. Mm-hmm. And we speak as women, we speak from the heart, we speak on the fact that we are the life givers for our children, and that we be able to put in place a journey for our children. So it can be a little bit better than our journey at the present time.
Well, yeah, you had just touched on, I guess, some of the maybe foundational differences of how a man would lead as opposed to a woman. So can you touch a little bit more on that? Leading into my next question is just what are some of the main differences really, and maybe how it's led?
Well, every leader leads with the heart. Mm-hmm. But as a woman, as a mother, as a grandmother, as a giver of life, we tend to be able to hold our children closer to our hearts, and to ensure that we be able and capable of taking care of them. And a lot of the government, what they have done to our people in terms of Bill C-92, where they tried to prove that we couldn't take care of our children.
Right.
But we are very much so at a time where we need to be able to speak to it, and the injustice that has been done to our people need to be corrected, and it's the women that are going to correct that.
Yeah. So what do you think it means for other women in leadership roles and the youth to see a woman as the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs?
I believe that we have broken some barriers in terms of having a woman in the leadership of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, and to be able to be supported by the majority of the chiefs is a great honor for myself, and that they be able to believe in what I can bring forth in terms of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, to be able to lead them in a good way, in a good heart, to be able to speak in a good way, in a good heart for our people here in Manitoba, realizing that we do make up 22% of the total population of Indigenous people here in Manitoba, right? And yet we're the poorest of the poor, and that shouldn't be. And the government needs to listen to the voices, to the leadership in Manitoba here.
Mm-hmm. Well, just in relation to that last question, do you have any advice for a woman or a little girl who's maybe thinking, seeing you and is like, oh, maybe I want to, take on some sort of leadership, whether it just be in their community even, or
Yes, for sure. I would so encourage our young women, our little girls that are out there, being able to see that having a woman in the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs leadership, that they can do it too, that they can take that, and never to be scared to take that step to be in these positions. It's not an easy journey. It wasn't an easy journey for myself to become a leader in my community. And I was basically groomed through time, through when I was in council as well. I was there for over 10 years. So I had to learn. And when I did seek for the chief of my community, it took a while. I didn't get picked right away, right? Yeah. But a lot of times we need to be able to prove that we are very capable of doing the job. We're not in terms of being strong. We're not strong as our men, and we will always depend on our men to do that work. But in terms of being able to bring light to our communities, it's the woman that does that, and it's the woman that take care of the community.
It sure is, absolutely. Yeah. So I want to sort of just change subjects a little bit, but still on the same subject. One of the things that some people might be wondering is the wearing of a headdress. Now, will you be wearing a headdress in the future?
Yes, I will be.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily a man's headdress.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't take it lightly, because we did ask in ceremony to see what we were going to do in terms of my leadership. I never wore a headdress when I was chief.
Right.
And so we asked in ceremony as to what we would be able to do. So we'll have a headdress ceremony come hopefully at the end of January.
Okay.
And it's going to be it was the messaging through ceremony was it's time to bring back what the women leaders wore back, what our ancestors wore at that time.
Mm-hmm. And before we, so that's going to be super encouraging to see. With
Yes,
that, I'm
for
sure we will be there as well for that
sure,
ceremony.
yes.
But before we let you go, I just sort of wanted to ask an overall question about everything we're talking about, and why is it so important to see just Indigenous women in leadership roles, in whether it be government or politics or like I mentioned, in their own community? Why is that so important?
It's important because, and I think I said it earlier, that it's the woman that's going to take that lead to the wellness of our people. There's so many addictions, so many things that we are put through from residential school, from day schools, from 60s school, from taking our children out of our homes, because people in government didn't think that we were capable of taking care of our children. Mm-hmm. And that's not right. How would they feel? I can't imagine that happening. So we need to change the way that people think and view of our people, mm-hmm. that we are capable. We do have good hearts. It's just that there are obstacles in how we take care of our own. And that shouldn't be. That shouldn't be, because we can do it ourselves. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of very educated, bright First Nation young people that are eventually gonna take over, and they are eventually, maybe they're not gonna be as kind as we are, but they're gonna do right for their people as well.
Well, they certainly are, and it helps that somebody like yourself is leading the charge as well. So, Grand Chief Mayor, I want to say a big thank you, miigwech, for you.
Thank you.
We're going to have to leave our interview there, but we certainly appreciate you taking some time for us today.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks for the invite.
All right, we have to step aside for a short break. We'll have more Women in Leadership talk when we come back.
Join our conversation now. Like us on Facebook on our APTN News page. Follow or tweet us at APTN InFocus, and send your thoughts to infocus@aptn.ca.
Welcome back to APTN in Focus. The month of October marked the 30th anniversary of Women in Canadian History. Our reporter Annette Francis reminds us of a trailblazer from the Ojibwe community of Curve Lake First Nation in Ontario.
It's a memorable time for Rita Rose, sorting through old photos and sharing stories of her late mother, Elsie Knott. Knott is celebrated as not only Curve Lake's first female chief, but the first in Canada as well. In 1951, the Indian Act was amended to allow First Nations women to participate in band elections. 3 years later, when Rita was 11 years old, she remembers her mother had been asked by some members to run for chief.
She was always helping before that, like she was helping with baseball and things going on in Curve Lake, like the Homemakers Club and different in that church. So I guess maybe they saw that leadership quality in her, and then they came and asked her to run. So she did, and she was really surprised when she won.
Rita says her mother had a convincing spirit and unconventional ideas. With no funding, she bought a hearse to get the kids to high school in a nearby community.
After a while, she was able to get bigger buses because more children wanted to go. She drove the bus for over 30 years.
All right, our next guest is Cora Voyager, a Dene woman from the Athabasca Chippewa First Nation. She is a sociology professor at the University of Calgary, and her research specializes in Indigenous women's leadership. She joins me now. Dr. Voyager, thank you so much for joining us here on APTN in Focus. We're talking about all things women in leadership and prominent roles. So my first question, or it's not really a question, I guess, is can you just maybe tell us about some of the things you've been working on in terms of Indigenous women in leadership roles?
Well, I did the first academic study of women leaders, political leaders in Canada, and I'm also now doing a follow-up study, doing a comparison between male and female leaders, the experiences, as well as what the community expects. The differences between the expectations of male and female leaders. So with my first study, I studied women chiefs in Canada, and I followed that up with a study of women councillors in Canada. And with the first study, as I mentioned, there were, very kind of random accounts of women in leadership in the Indigenous community, but there had never been a full academic study. And I interviewed 63 of the then 90 women chiefs in Canada and found some very interesting information about them. For example, about 3/4 of them had some form of post-secondary education, which was very high at that time because post-secondary education in the First Nation community was running about 40%. So this was a very educated group. They were also, 3/4 of these women were from what I call politically involved families. So they came from political families within the reserve community. And what I also found was that they felt that they were less likely to be a charismatic leader than males. And also the types of duties that they were given and the expectations that they had was that they were expected to deal with what I called soft issues, childcare, elder care, education, social services within the community, whereas they felt at that time that they were expected, not necessarily expected, to deal with hard issues like economic development, housing, those types of things.
So how has that sort of changed in the women that you interviewed? What have you learned, and how has it changed over the years from when you first did it to maybe a little more recently?
More recently, there seems to be more of an acceptance of women leaders. There was some resistance at the beginning. I found that there was an expectation that leaders in the community were going to be male. And of course, this tied specifically to the Indian Act, because we know that women were not allowed to participate in meetings, political meetings, and they were not allowed to stand for office or vote in band elections until 1951. So there was a bit of resistance, and some of the women said that, community members and elders, resisted them and said that they didn't believe that women should be chief.
Well,
and now this has changed.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off there. So the
okay.
first female chief was elected in the 1950s, and
Yes.
I'd love to get your perspective on how maybe things have changed since then, given all the work you've done on female chiefs specifically. So like I just mentioned, the first chief in the 1950s, and there's more now, which is great to see.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just wondering, in that time frame, maybe what were some of the difficulties? Now everything has sort of changed leading up to our current day.
Okay. From when the first woman chief was elected, Elsie Knott, at Curve Lake in Ontario, for that first decade, there was about 10 women chiefs across Canada. What we have found now is that about 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 chiefs in Canada are women. Most of the women chiefs are in British Columbia, and as we know, there are about 1/3 of the First Nations in Canada are in British Columbia, who seem to be very progressive and very willing to elect women to deal with issues that they are dealing with in their communities. So, having to deal with industry, in forestry, fisheries, mining, those types of issues. And what I found was that there was an increase in the number of women chiefs from 45 to 90 in the 1990s, and there was a leveling off, and now there seems to be, the numbers are creeping up again.
And Dr. Voyageur, what are some of the challenges a woman faces when it comes to maybe running an election or after being elected as chief? I mean, have you seen anything or heard anything? I know you mentioned sometimes they're relied on for maybe the softer issues, right? So just curious about that angle as well.
What I found was that women were still expected to deal with family issues. Many of these women were middle-aged women, so they had children, grandchildren, as well as perhaps aging parents, and they were, what I called a member of the sandwich generation. So they were kind of the meat in the sandwich and expected to deal with a lot of issues. So not just within their family, but also within their community. People were expected to, or chiefs were expected to, also deal with, if there's a crisis in the community, they are expected to, come forward with that, and not so much in the way that men were. I mean, women are expected to, help cook for a feast, or, help cook for a wake, and these types of things, and that wasn't something that was expected of men. And what we also found was that the female relatives of the men were more likely to help them with their duties than they were the women. And also what the women found was that a lot of the social support that they had within their community kind of fell away when they took that leadership role. And they had to work very hard to be seen as not changing as a result of power. And with men, that wasn't necessarily so.
And I just want to move, still on the same topic, but moving away from the female chiefs for a second. What are you seeing in terms of other women taking prominent leadership roles, whether it be in business or like another sector? What have you seen in that regard, Dr. Voyageur?
Well, this past year, we have seen some really big, situations where women have moved into leadership roles. Of course, we have Mary May Simon, who is our Governor General. We have Roseanne Archibald, who was elected to the national chief role for the Assembly of First Nation. And now we have an Indigenous woman on the Supreme Court of Canada, Michelle Obamsawin. So, women are really moving forward. We have also a woman who is the leader of the First Nation University of Canada in Regina, Jackie Ottman. So we have women moving into very prominent roles in our society. And that doesn't surprise me at all, because what we know with women is that they are more likely to be educated than men. Generally, what we've seen is about a 3-to-1 ratio of degree attainment for women. And I see this as a result of women more likely to have, more likely to be single parents, leading single parent households. And the type of jobs that women do are not well-paying jobs. So about 1/3 of our employed population are what we would call tertiary positions, sales and service. But also, what we also know is that 1/3 of our female population, employment population, are in administration, business, and finance.
Right.
So those two are leveling each other out.
And Dr. Voyageur, I'd love to get your opinion on this next question here. Why is it important to see Indigenous women taking on these leadership roles, whether it be a female chief or moving into a political role, or having their own business, or just anything like that? Like, why is it so important that these women are taking on these leadership roles?
Well, I think it's important because women have always played an important role traditionally in our society. And it was when Europeans' contact happened that they were essentially taken taken out of that role and supplanted by men. And this was European influence. And what happened in many communities was that the acceptance of those outside rules in our community meant that women were officially taken out of those positions. But as we know, unofficially, women were very much in ask for their advice and those types of things. And, women are very much the administrators within our communities, and they have, their finger on the pulse of what's going on in the community. They know, where the challenges are, they know where the strengths are, and I think it's important for them to be in those leadership roles because they have a sense of what's going on in the community.
And before we let you go here, Dr. Voyageur, where do you see the number of women in leadership roles going? Do you see it going up, maybe staying the same? What do you see in terms of the future of women in leadership?
I see the numbers going up. As I mentioned before, there was a doubling of the numbers until the mid-1990s. Then there was a plateau, and then they started creeping up again. So I can see this number going up.
Well, that's certainly great to hear. We'll have to leave it there, Dr. Voyageur, but I want to say a big thank you, Miigwech, to you for taking some time out of your day and sharing your perspectives and your insight into what we're talking about with women in leadership roles, Indigenous women in leadership roles. So big thank you, Miigwech, to you for joining us.
Masicho.
All right, let's go to social media now with our social media editor, Jesse Andrushko, to hear what some of you are saying about today's topic.
Thanks, Daryl. Online, we asked our followers why they think it's important to see women in leadership roles. We got a lot of response on our APTN News Instagram page. Let's take a look. First, from Sue, she says, it's important for younger generations to see what women can do to inspire their own dreams. Squib says, because matriarchs think generationally. From Nicole, our matriarchs have been stripped of so much honor and respect, it's time to see them shine again. Alicia says, because the patriarchal systems in place are failing everyone, especially women and children. Men created the current failing colonial resource extraction dumpster fire. From user Rise Up, our women were matriarchs, they led with love and good intention to ensure equity. Lastly, from Brittany, because stats show that people perform better and feel better with women in positions above them. Thank you to everyone that took the time to respond. If you want to share your thoughts on women in leadership, here's how. send an email to infocus@aptn.ca, like us on Facebook on our APTN News page, or follow and tweet us at APTN InFocus.
All right, it's time for one final break. We'll have more APTN in Focus when we come back. Welcome back. Joining us now is Métis National Council President Cassidy Karen. Karen took over the role just a little over a year ago now, after previously serving 4 years as a provincially elected representative of the Métis Nation of British Columbia. President Karen, thanks so much for joining us here on APTN in Focus. You've been president of the Métis National Council now for just over a year, right? So how's this past year been for you?
It's been a really incredible year. It's been an incredibly busy year with all of the work that we've been doing at the Métis National Council, you know, not only just within the Secretariat and with our governing members of the Métis National Council, but a lot of really large global events happening as well that has included the Métis Nation. So lots of different events. It's been incredibly busy, but it's been a really positive year, a lot of positive growth and a lot of positive development as we continue to move forward the Métis Nation.
And there's been no shortage of adversity as well, I imagine, for you since having been elected, you know, the MMF leaving, a lawsuit against the MMF and others. I'm just curious to know, like, how do you deal with some of the challenges that you face and will continue to face leading this organization?
Honestly, it's through continuing to ground myself with our communities and with elders to make sure that everything that I'm doing as I do this work at the national level, advancing the Métis voice at the national and international levels, is really grounded from our communities up. And I do that through constant communication with our governing members, constant communication with citizens and communities all across the Métis Nation homeland, and a lot of support from my elders.
And you had mentioned some of the highlights just before I had asked that last question. So what are some of the highlights since you've become president?
I think, the first one top of mind is our annual General Assembly at the Métis National Council. We just wrapped up our General Assembly about 3 weeks ago, the first one since my election. And it was extremely positive. So much work has been done in this last year, so much work to bring the Métis Nation closer together, to find different ways to collaborate as we evolve towards, really seeing through some of the visions that our ancestors have dreamt of for many, many generations. And as we move towards those, we need to evolve together. We need to work together. We need to collaborate more. And we're finding those different ways of doing so. And I think the General Assembly that we just completed really showed that positive movement forward. And I'm very happy with that. And that's right now the number one highlight that's top of my mind. But of course, there's been so many incredible things that have happened throughout this last year. We've been able to really, since last March when travel opened up, of course, we're still dealing with the pandemic, but travel opened up a little bit more, and we were able to travel throughout the Métis Nation homeland and visiting with communities, learning their stories, sharing those stories at the national and international level so that we can continue to influence change for the Métis Nation.
So why is it important for the Métis National Council to have a woman leader after so many years with men leading the charge?
Well, there's a number of different reasons, and the one that I've talked with my elders and a lot of community members about is that women in the Métis Nation have a different perspective to bring to leadership roles. Women are life bearers, life givers. So we inherently have the big picture when we lead. We have a big picture looking forward into the future generations to try to build a brighter future for the next generations to come. And so we bring a really unique perspective to leadership. And, within the Métis Nation, women have played an incredible role throughout our history. And a lot of those stories, they go untold. We have, of course, our heroes of the Métis Nation, Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont, but there's been some really incredible leaders in the background, women leaders in the background that have done so much incredible work to help the nation get to where we are today. And so, I take it on as my responsibility to start uncovering some of those stories and uplifting our women who have really brought us to where we are today, and to bring that unique perspective to this leadership role.
And so what can you bring that somebody else can't, or maybe that a male couldn't in this role right now?
Well, that's a really fascinating question. I think everybody has their own unique skills, regardless of if you're male, female, or gender diverse. Everybody has a role to play within our nation. For me specifically, I think the skills that I bring to this position is being able to foster that inclusivity, to bring as many diverse voices to the table as possible. When we think about, building a nation, moving forward, we need to do what we can to represent the diversity of the Métis Nation. And we can only do that by bringing more voices to the table. And so I see myself as a facilitator of that collaboration and bringing more voices to the table so that we're doing this in a good way to ensure that the Métis Nation moves forward to build a brighter future for everybody.
And what kinds of barriers, do Indigenous women face when it comes to, getting into these leadership roles or trying to get into some of these leadership roles?
I think there's a number of challenges. And, I think one of the challenges that we face as women in leadership is actually talking about the challenges that we face. But it's so important that we do talk about the challenges that we face as Indigenous women in leadership, Because if we don't, then we're not going to be finding solutions, and we're going to be leaving those challenges for the next generations to come. So talking about the challenges is incredibly important. One of the challenges, obviously, that I face as a young Métis leader is ageism and misogyny. Still, wherever I go, there's always going to be individuals in a room who, who don't take me as seriously until I bring the voice of our communities to that table and show individuals that we deserve to be here as women leaders, as young women leaders. You really have to earn that respect in a way that I think men maybe don't have to work as hard for. I'm not discounting anybody's unique experiences, but that is what I have faced in this last year. I think there's a lot of challenges, outside of just this specific position, but for women Métis leaders who want to succeed in, different areas, different corporations, or they want to, become the CEO or a president of another company. Métis women carry so many responsibilities for their families, for their communities. We have so many roles to play. And when you want to succeed in other realms, you're often forced to choose between, serving your community, serving your family, or succeeding in whatever it is you want to succeed in. And we have to do our part in changing those positions to ensure that Métis women can do what they want to do, succeed in whatever career they want to succeed in, while also not having to choose between serving their community, their nation, or their family. And that's some of the work that I am trying to do, trying to talk about, working with different organizations to shape that future so that Métis women can fill those positions and really succeed.
And you had already touched on my next question, but maybe I'll just expand on it a little bit. So you mentioned some of the personal challenges you faced since becoming president. I wonder if there's maybe a couple more that you could think of since coming into your role?
This role specifically at the Métis National Council, we've had a lot of work to do in this last year. This organization has a long way to go to evolve alongside of our governing members, the Métis Nation British Columbia, Métis Nation Alberta, Métis Nation Saskatchewan, and Métis Nation of Ontario have done some incredible work in the last number of years to evolve into Métis governments that serve their citizens. The Métis National Council has to evolve alongside of our Métis governing members to be able to do the work that they need us to do to advocate for them at the national and international levels. So we're in a time of growth, we're in a time of evolvement, and we're just doing so much work, but the outcome of that hard work is going to be incredible. And I know that we're going to be, and we are doing some really great things to make sure that our governing members are represented.
What, and just kind of further to that, what advice do you have for other women who want to be leaders, whether it be in their community, in their local organization? Just what advice do you have for other women who just want to be leaders?
Well, first and foremost, I always say that every individual has leadership within them. It's not something that you have to go out and find. Everybody has leadership within them, and they just have to foster that in whatever area that you're passionate about. Within our Métis communities, our artists are leaders, our educators are leaders, parents are leaders. Everybody has that leadership within them, and you just need to find what you're passionate about and pursue that. And I think that's the advice that I have for especially young Métis women, is find what you're passionate about, pursue it. There is a role for everybody within our communities to play within the nation building process that we're currently in. And I encourage everybody to get involved in whatever way it is that they want to and pursue it.
President Karen, I think that's a great way to end our conversation. I want to say a big thank you, Miigwech, to you for coming on APTN InFocus and sharing a bit of your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much.
Next on In Focus is Melanie Dean of the Indigenous Leadership Development Institute. Now, the Institute is a 100% Indigenous owned and operated nonprofit, and their work focuses on building leadership capacity within Indigenous people. And I spoke with Melanie a bit earlier. Melanie, thank you so much for joining us here on APTN In Focus. Let's start off, for those that aren't familiar, can you tell us about the Indigenous Leadership Development Institute?
Hi, yes, very proud of the work that we do at ILDI. We are a 100% Indigenous owned and operated nonprofit organization that was established to build the capacity of Indigenous people across Canada. We've been around for 22 years now, and I've been with the Institute for 16 years. So when I started here, I was considered a youth. So I've grown and built my own capacity, and it's been a great opportunity, and seeing other people grow just like I did has been really inspiring outcomes of the work that we do.
So can you detail some of the work that you do and your colleagues do as well?
Sure. We're a small staff. We're about 6 people. And we do that on purpose, and we're all women. That's not by design, it's just the way things happen. And we deliver training, executive training sessions to Indigenous people. Our president and CEO, her name is Rosa Walker. She's from Peguis First Nation, and she's the founder of the organization. And she has this amazing story of where she came from. She's worked for various other institutions, but she always saw the need for our people delivering training to our own people. She was seeing non-Indigenous consultants being hired to offer services and coming in and deliver training sessions. Our communities were being gouged, and we're a $1 million industry. So when she started the Institute, it took a lot of work for her to convince that our people can deliver quality training, just like the non-Indigenous consultants have done. And now she's been doing this for 22 years, and our training sessions have just grown immensely.
So why is it so important to have a program like this, Melanie?
It's important because we know our people. When you hire a non-Indigenous consultant, you often have to give them training on how our communities work. We are from our communities, we know our people, we know our needs, so we can go in and deliver training that is specific to their outcomes, and we build capacity so they can do the work for themselves, and they don't need to hire someone to come in and do the work for them. We also have other projects. We've done women leader programs over the years that saw some pretty amazing results. We also address the limited amount of women in trades programs. We wanted to see women advance in the trades industry, so we addressed that with some pretty fantastic outcomes.
And you had just mentioned the women in leadership, and that's exactly what we're talking about today, is women taking on these leadership roles. How often do you see Indigenous women interested in taking on leadership roles in the work that you do?
A lot of women. All women that I come across since I've been working here at the Institute have expressed their interest in wanting to be in leadership positions, but it's the fear of being criticized or feeling like they just don't have the capability to do it, but it's in them, it's within them. They just need some empowerment. So a lot of our programs come from that empowerment approach. We bring in other women leaders to inspire them and encourage them to do the work. It's that first step that's really scary. They have to stretch it, pull it, shape it. It's okay to be criticized at first, but over time, when you build that, when you build your capacity, it turns into something really special, and it can only benefit our people more in the end.
And Melanie, why is it so important for women to take charge and to want to be in these roles and to be a leader, whether it be in their community or their organization or in politics? Why is it so important for women to take charge?
For a couple of reasons. It improves the outcomes for everyone, not just women, but for society in general. The things that women have accomplished over the years have greatly benefited society, mainstream society, and Indigenous people. Also, we have to keep in mind our future generations. They're looking up to us. They're watching every step that we make. So it's really important that we step into those leadership positions, hear their story. Hear stories of women leaders is very important as well.
And how have things changed over the years, I guess, in terms of the Institute and female involvement and women coming in and wanting to be leaders? And you had mentioned that a lot of the when women come in, a lot of it is fear for not wanting to be, for whatever reason, the fear of trying to be a leader. But so how have things changed over the years that you've seen at the Institute regarding the women that come in and want to take the training?
Some pretty fantastic results happen when you bring a group of women together in the same room over a long period of time. One of our programs, we recruited 20 women, 10 from the north and 10 from the south, from First Nation communities. We put them together in a room and had them spend time with one another over a course of 1 year. They took training together, they had discussions together, and as a group, not designed part of the program, they just decided amongst themselves, there's this major election coming up, we need one of us to put our names forward. And nobody wanted to do it. No one raised their hand, no one stepped forward until the women came together and really just selected one person and said, you have to do it. It took some convincing, but she did it, and she won the election. And she's gone on to have a pretty fantastic career in politics.
And what's that like for you to see something like that happen? And over the years, as these women come in and you guys are giving them the tools to succeed, I mean, what's it mean for you working at this organization?
It means a lot. A major component of the work that we do is our youth program, Empowering Indigenous Youth in Governance and Leadership. The acronym is EAGLE. We have a lot of young people in our program who are looking for mentorship and people to look up to as leaders. They want to learn from them. And just having this pool of strong Indigenous women leaders doing these amazing things, they want to give back. So that's what it means to us. Is it's not just creating the success part, being successful. It's just seeing it carry on to future generations.
And what do you hope for the future in terms of leadership training and women and youth in leadership roles? What do you hope happens for the future?
I hope to see more changes in the system. The system is set up to fail us. And the more I see women out there doing some pretty fantastic things, it could only change and transform, and we can shape it into something that works and for the next generation. So I think that's what excites me the most, is being able to witness the amazing things that women are doing right now.
And what are some of the things that the organization and yourself are working on towards the future? Are you able to share some of some future plans with us?
Yeah. So our request for training is growing. We've done women programs. We started out with the one women's program when I first started the Institute back in 2006. And since that was so successful, we've just kept it going. So we're always pushing, trying to build upon that, because it's important when we do these sorts of projects. They call them pilots, pilot projects. You finish, it has a life expectancy for a year or 2 or 3, and then once the program is over, it just ends. The file closes, and that's it. No one heard about that. And then you pick up and try and start something new. But what we're doing is it's growing, it's transforming, we're shaping it, we're learning from mistakes. So I think that's what main important message that we have for anybody is to have the courage to put yourself out there, be brave. It's hard thinking that you're going to be criticized or looked at. It's hard for some of us to have the spotlight on us, and to be a leader. That in many ways, that's what it means. Even though there are women out there who are doing work kind of behind the scenes, we don't see them. But the results do affect us. So I think that's what we strive to do, is to give that spotlight for women to take a place in a leadership role and experience, and encourage them. It's okay to fall down. You're going to trip. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be messy, but we're going to get through it together. And that's so important that we maintain that message to women.
Well, Melanie, I think that's a great way to end our conversation. I want to say a big thank you, Miigwech, to you for taking some time out of your day and sharing what you and your organization does and empowering so many women and youth and future leaders. So thank you.
Okay.
All right, that's all we have for you on today's APTN InFocus. Again, thank you to all of our guests for joining us. Today's episode will be available as a podcast. You can listen and subscribe on aptnnews.ca/podcasts or find us on your favorite player. And if you missed any of our podcast episodes and want to catch up, you can find them and more on aptnnews.ca/infocus. Thank you for joining us, Miigwech, and have a great afternoon.